I want to talk about our friends at Share Your Genius because they sponsor and produce this show. And without them, we would have a lot more work to do. And so we're forever thankful for them. If you have a show or you want to start a show and you want it produced at legendary quality, go check out our friends at Share Your Genius. Tell them Nick and Erica sent you.
Hell yes.
Who would go to Panera?
I went to Panera in college.
Take a Zoom call at Panera. Who would do that?
Who goes to Panera after college?
He was
is
wearing
really
a
the
MAGA
question.
hat. Like, it was crazy. It was wild.
Oh, what a nightmare. What a nightmare.
That I think that's why Tass likes you, because you haven't debunked her story. You can't prove it didn't happen. I think that's the thing.
You can't prove it. And to be honest, I can't prove it didn't happen, and I may not remember. It may actually have happened, and I just don't remember it.
I want her to start producing AI generated receipts on this one. She's like, look, here's the security camera footage of Anthony in there eating a bacon turkey bravo at this.
I'm just giving Tass the benefit of the doubt because, I don't know, Anthony and I spent so much time together. Like, we call each other out on our shit, and Anthony is notorious for saying one thing. I never said that, and we do it back and forth. He'll go find a screenshot where I said something and send it back to me, and there's an inkling of truth to it, I'm sure.
This is great. All right, we'll have to interrogate Tass on this one.
We're coming for you, Tess.
We're coming for her.
Yeah, have we started recording?
Oh yeah, we're here.
Yeah,
We're in.
yeah.
This is it.
We're
This
doing
is
the Devin Reed play where we just lead in and there's
this
no,
is the entire episode of
there's
us
no
just
intro.
scrutinizing Tass's credibility on whether her stories about you are true or not.
Is there a Between the Ferns segment we should prepare for?
God.
Yes.
That was the
that'd be great if you
funniest
guys
thing. I watch that like once a month. It's hilarious.
Yeah, it's so good.
Between two solos, I don't know. The irony, so this is the great irony of solopreneurship, and all of this is like no one goes alone. And I think, and Rob, you had mentioned this too in your comment. You were like, co-founder. Like, I feel like everyone should have this co-founder. Anthony, when I interviewed you, the first thing you said, you were like, do not discredit or like downplay the value that a co-founder has. And it's like, we call it like this great irony is that like, this is a show for solopreneurs, but it's like the two of us doing it. And then like a lot of people as solos still, I think, appreciate and look at you two as solos, but it's like, and then you're building a business and you also now have employees but yet it's still under that umbrella of solopreneurship. Basically, no one goes alone. I think that's just like the great irony of all of this.
Do you guys consider yourselves solos? Or how do you self-identify in the business world?
What do you say, Rob?
That's an interesting question. I'll take it. It's like, I'd say we're probably in more of a transition. I heard a phrasing the other day from Andrew Wilkinson. Do you follow him at all?
I don't know. I gotta look at the little face bubble.
He's like he's like a modern day Buffett Munger, and he loves them, so he's just carrying the torch, but really solid. He's built and started tons of businesses, and he's monster now. He owns Tiny Capital, and they've got 280 businesses or something crazy. But the way he talked about it in his journey of like building businesses, he's like, when you start, you created a job for yourself.
Yes.
And I think that's definitely where Anthony and I are at right now. We created this job. Like, great, we have customers coming in, but it's a job. We're in the weeds. We do the work. Like, even to date, we're running at least one, if not two sprints any given week. And there's going to be this transition period for us as we move to business operator owner, where we have a team running these things. And so right now, I very much put us closer to the solo piece. And so obviously there's two parts to that of like, there's two of us, but we're still doing the work, and we operate very much like a solo person would in the way we think about things and trying to create systems. That will evolve. I think eventually we will be pivoting out of the solo of sorts, but by enabling almost other solos to come in. Like even with our recent hire, Sarah, we view her as a version of us. Like we want to now hold her up as like, you are going to become a de facto positioning expert in the space. We want her to have that exposure. And so my take would be, yeah, solo, even though there's two of us to the, having the support network that you're talking about, Nick.
Well, this is an interesting conundrum that most people find themselves in, which is as they try to build the business, they're like, well, I am the business. And not in like an egotistical way, but like you guys are the business. Like people very much relate with you two and the content. And when they hire Fletch, a lot of it is they want to work with you guys. And the friction is, how do I do all of that and then hand them off to someone else who we know is competent and capable and highly credible and all the things. But people feel like that there's that friction there where they won't let go of that piece of the like running the, even if they're just on the calls and they're delivering the work or they're presenting the work, they're not necessarily creating and doing the delivery of it on the back end. How are you guys managing that?
They're scared. We hear the word scared a lot. I'm scared that clients aren't going to want to pay as much or find it as valuable if they perceive that they're getting me and then they don't get me.
Here's the strategy we're going to try to do.
Okay.
This is going to be a long-term strategy. We've talked to people about if we ever wanted to sell the business, like what would we need to do? We've been thinking like long-term defensibility a lot. And that's the number one thing. Like we've heard this from multiple people. They were like, the biggest challenge is going to be getting it from founder-led brand to just a brand. We look to Chris Walker.
I just knew you were going to say it.
He has a very polarizing profile in the world of B2B. But what he did very well was build a business on the back of his brand that he has since removed himself from, and it is still thriving. So we watched, what did he do? He slowly made each employee of Refine Labs a known, respected quantity on LinkedIn. And over time, that spread the brand equity from just Chris Walker to Refine. When you see high quality content coming from multiple different people's faces with Refine in their headline, all of a sudden you're like, what's this Refine Labs thing? It must be a cool place to work, and it looks like they're doing great work for really cool companies. And over time, it gets diffused out. And whether Chris knew that going in, I don't know. I haven't talked to him about this to know what was going on, if this was a conscious strategy or not. But Rob and I, when we were thinking about this, we were like, okay, well, if we're going to hire someone, do we want them to build an audience or not? And on the risk-averse side, we could say we don't want them to build an audience, because once they get the audience, what's to stop them from just going out and having a service or of their own, right? Like they're not going to need us anymore because we provide the pipeline. But if they get the audience, they'll have a pipeline and they'll have all this credibility of like, well, I worked with Fletch or I worked with whoever. And Rob correctly made the point that he said, that's fine, because if they have this audience, it's also promoting the brand, which will make more people want to work there. Oh, everyone who I see works at Refine Labs ends up getting to 15, 20, 30,000 followers. I would like to do that. So it attracts more great talent. And it's like, we've talked about it, like people, especially in our delivery model, which you, Erica, pointed out very aptly, is very grueling. It is a slog.
Is there something behind the...
Yeah.
We're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about this.
And so it's like Rob's like, it's like you do a tour of duty with Fletch. We know that these people in the current role, they're not going to want to do 20, 10 projects a month for 10 years. It's not a sustainable lifestyle. So if someone does that with us, our thought is, okay, can we get a year or two out of them? And then can we offer them a higher level, cooler, differentiated role to keep them on? Could we offer them higher salaries to keep them on? And in lieu of either of those things working, and they go on their own, ideally, if we've helped them build a credibility and build a brand that has also increased the brand credibility of Fletch outside of just Rob and I, will we have gotten a nice pipeline of new people? So it is really a win-win for everyone. And then you get to put, X Refine Labs in your headline, which lands you the job at, Chili Piper, lands you the job at whatever the 10 places that look up to Refine that have hired all these people, or they've gone solo and are killing it. So it's like, it truly is this big collective winning cycle for everyone involved.
Yeah.
And we will see, because Anthony hit the risks. Like, there will come a point. So we just hired this brilliant woman, Sarah, who's starting to run our process, and it's going really well. There will come a point, probably, who knows the threshold? She runs 100 of these, 150 of these, where she will have this stance of like, I've positioned 150 startups. Not many people get to say that in the world. Where she then will have this decision point of what she wants to do. We're trying to get ahead of it, and Anthony alluded to this, of like, how can we entice her, and it will be her choice, to stay with us versus go? And so we're thinking about those risk levers, and is it comp? Is it scope of work? Do you want to be entrepreneurial? Is there a safe place where you can build internally with us, where we de-risk the whole thing? We'll give you your first customers. We'll give you a huge piece of the pie. And we're not against doing that. We sort of see ourselves almost like a law firm model of like, yeah, start in and like, we want you in the corner office making $1 million a year. How do we get you there?
Yeah.
Right. And
So you're the
I
suits
think
of
a lot
positioning.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go that
Rob is Harvey for sure, and I'm the young guy with no experience.
I
who has
think
faked
he
his way
just
in.
indirectly just called himself a genius. Did everybody hear that?
The young guy with no experience is an absolute genius. Yes.
Yeah.
I left that part out because I only relate to the first half of it.
Yeah. And a lot of these theses, if that's even a word, theses. But when Anthony and I met, we were at a larger agency, larger studio. And when we started building this thing, like these were the conversations we were having of like, we're putting in the work as founders. We're taking on, basically it was de-risk for us, but we were selling deals for this agency. And we were trying to come up with like, what is the long-term path for us to work together? And
What could they have offered to have us
yes.
stay?
And a lot of it does come back to comp, I think, comp and scope of work. And we were just very far away. And so Anthony and I are thinking about this more from a point of like, what are we willing to do that the other agency wasn't? And I think it's leaving a lot of money on the table to enable the people that come and work for us. Like, we don't mind giving them bukus of money if we get a part of the return and we all grow collectively together.
Yeah.
I think that's smart. I don't want to stay on this for too much longer, but just anecdotally, I was Sarah at an agency. And Tom Watley, I don't know if you know Grizzle, but Tom Watley.
We worked with Tom. Yeah,
Okay.
He went through our sprint process. Yeah.
Awesome. So Tom is the best guy ever. And he encouraged me to start a personal brand back in 2022 because he knew that it was going to be a big thing that was going to have a ripple effect to get Grizzle on the map more than it was.
Yeah.
And the same exact thing happened that you predicted. It got to the point where I was big enough to crave going out on my own. And the agency wasn't at the point where it could give me exactly what I wanted, plus a couple other factors. So we parted ways, but it absolutely, I'm not to say that I'm like the best thing ever, but it certainly helped put Grizzle on the map. So it does have that ripple effect. And I think it's smart to think about what you're going to do when that happens with Sarah. Not if, but when, if she does it well.
Yeah.
Well, Sarah
We'll see.
being really good at it, like everyone's a beneficiary of that. And for you guys to bring other people up. But what is fascinating to me is what Anthony alluded to, which is like, it's a fucking grind. The whole thing is a grind. And what kind of put me onto this is like, I fully believe in your mission to get everyone to be transparent with their price on their website. 100,000% agree with this. But what I realized what was happening was that when people were doing that, they accidentally, and I think it's an accident. I don't think people meant to do this, but they inadvertently reposition their business as a like productized service. If they weren't doing it before or whatever they were doing, and they ended up kind of like just putting that out there. And I was like, they just made the decision to like go into this supply demand and like volume based service offering without realizing what was going on. And I'm absolutely blown away at the volume you guys operate in because you are capable of producing enough demand to not only make this thing work at the volume you do, but to then keep it up and then to also on the operations side of this thing, like to manage all of the work while keeping the pipeline full. Like, how do you guys manage all of that shit all at once? Like, I feel like you have to have a legendary operations person either in one of you or somewhere else that has helped you figure this out.
So, Nick, I talked with my sister, who is actually our copywriter, which we don't normally share. For your audience, this is maybe news. But our
just broke
main
it.
primary principal copywriter is my sister. So we talked about this a lot. And I have thoughts on your guys, because we listened to your episode. We were all discussing it internally. And I was curious, actually, because one of you made the comment. You said, people come on the show, not the show, people come on to your service, right? Maybe they also come on this show, but they come to the service and they say, we want to be like Fletch. We want to be like Fletch. I was curious, what do you think they mean by that explicitly? Because from what it sounded like you said is, you would remind them something that they were not aware of, which was, are you ready to make tons and tons of content? And they hadn't thought about that. And they're like, oh, shoot, I don't know if I could do that. So when they came onto your, to work with you guys and they say, we want to be like Fletch, what do you think they were describing specifically?
I think it is I definitely think it's the content. Like they want to have that be a part of their business. Like they want that side of it, but they also like the simplicity. Being like Fletch in a lot of ways means we're known for a very specific thing. We solve a very specific problem. It's highly repeatable. Like they're not thinking, like I think the gap there is mechanically, how the hell do you produce enough $5,000 projects a month to fill your capacity in your bank account and then do it every month forever? I think for me, it's a mechanics issue, not so much like it's the wrong thing, like a bad idea, but it's just mechanically, I think there's so many gaps for people that you've filled them all.
I think so, because my thought about this is the part that, regardless of your business model, you guys even said on the episode, the custom service, full service agency model is kind of dying, right? Horrible margins, terrible business, right? Like we all kind of agree on that. So assuming you're not going to do that, the parts of our model that are 100% transferable, in my opinion, you guys can push back on this, to literally anyone, are saying, I provide a specific service to a specific group of people at a price and pricing model that makes sense for the customer. That to me is 100% transferable. And it does not have to be productized to the sense of project-based work. I think you can do that in subscription world. I think you could do that in retainer, whatever you want to call it. In these other business models, I think you can be like Fletch. The second half of it is around pipeline and client, new pipeline and client generation.
To be clear, that's the linchpin. Like that right there is the linchpin. So it is a game of operational loading. How do we maintain a volume of clients over an extended period of time?
But right there, let's pause on the first point, to the first one there. When you talk about specific service, most of the people, where this breaks for most solos and consultants, they don't get specific enough. They are not willing to go narrow. And we see this a lot. Companies show up to us. They're like, we have this productized service. Oh, show me. What's the first step? Scoping and discovery. You don't have a productized service if
but Rob,
in your structured
even before we go down that path, just let me round out what I was saying for. So there's this podcast. We follow this guy named David C. Baker and this other guy, Blair Enns. They have this podcast. You guys probably heard of, Two Bops, right?
Yeah.
So the episode that they did was called You Don't Have to Eat Your Veggies. And it basically said, what's the best way to generate new business? And should you be doing all of them? And they broke it down into these three. They said, you can do content, writing and speaking. You can do cold outbound, and you can do networking. And so you should pick the one that you're going to actually do, like that you'll be most likely to do. If you're not a cold outbound person, don't try to do cold outbound because you'll never do it. You won't do it at the level that would be required to get new business. So I think of people like Tass. She does content, but I think her networking is actually how she gets the bulk of her business. She goes out and she comments on thousands of people's posts. She becomes this known quantity through her comments primarily. She meets people at conferences, right? She has a thriving business. Our old boss at our last company, he got the company to $8 million a year, 100% through his network. We also know people who do cold outbound as the primary way. There's a guy named Kyle Van Voris. He has an agency. They get all of their business from doing cold outbound and like doing it on LinkedIn, all sorts of fancy ways of like automations and things like that. Rob and I, we're in the content bucket and we post and do it at a high level. And that's how we get our clients. So I was talking to my sister about this, and basically we were talking about someone else we knew that tried to start the service. And they were like, I think I'm going to do the networking thing. They put out the big blast to like 100 people, and they said, hey, I'm doing this service. I'd like to help you. They got like maybe a client or two. And then the second time around, like after that client had finished, they had to go back and generate more pipeline. And they were like, I hate this. I don't want to do this. And they were like, well, okay, well, you don't want to do networking. Let's try writing content. So they tried writing content for a little bit. Like, I hate this. And then they're like, okay, you want to try cold outbound? And they're like, no, I would never want to do that. And it's like, okay, so you've actually crossed out the three big levers. Maybe you don't want to be an entrepreneur or a solopreneur. Yeah. Maybe you want to work in-house. And so then the person said, okay, and they went back in-house. There's this messy middle ground, which are people who say, I don't want to do any of those things. I bet I could get 3 or 4 big retainer clients and then never have to think about whatever my new pipeline generation is again. Or I'll maybe think of it once a year and it's the worst month of the year. I lose a client. Now I have to go and I hate it more than anything. In my opinion, you're actually not an entrepreneur necessarily. You have 3 or 4 part-time jobs. You didn't want to have one full-time job with one boss. I would rather have a little more optionality, a little more like freedom. I'm going to get 4 part-time jobs doing long-term work for 4 different companies. And for us, like, it's like, that's fine. But like when you guys were saying, most people don't want to create hundreds and hundreds of posts. Totally true. Those same people, in some cases, may not want to do what Task does either. Comment on thousands of comments and be on LinkedIn all day and go to events. And those people may also not want to do cold outbound like my friend Kyle does at this crazy high volume with all these automation tools. And so I think that's where it sort of gets mixed. It's like, there may be people who just don't want to think about pipeline at all, and maybe being a solopreneur is not the path for them.
Dude.
That's my thought. That
I
was
love
my.
it. I have so
No.
many
thought
thoughts.
back to you.
Well,
Go ahead,
okay.
Nick.
There's one, we talk about operational load, right? How many clients can you manage in any given like span of time? And so we see this as a spectrum, right? On one end, you are highly relationship driven, and to the point where you're like, I need a few clients to stay with me a really long time. And they probably pay higher ticket. Hopefully they pay higher ticket, highly relationship driven, mostly networking. And then on the other end, there is traffic based, pure subscription with a cart on your website type of thing. And then there's millions of little variations or whatever checkpoints along the way. I think you guys are in an interesting one because you do need a lot of traffic based on the way you've set up your operational load. Because of like, hey, it's very contained. It takes this amount of time. Therefore, we know we can deliver. If we deliver on time, we can manage this many
But
things.
even back up for a second, right? Before you keep going, and Rob can speak into this for a second. There's an alternate universe of Fletch where we only did cold outbound. Because when we were in the agency
Yes.
at our last business, Rob and this guy named Ira came up with this cold outbound model. It was along the same lines of what we're doing with content. Pick a hyper-specific group of people, hyper-specific outreach for this tiny little segment in the same way we do with the content. And Rob and Ira, they were booking, I don't know, 20, 30 sales calls. They were getting calls with CEOs of the companies like 20, 30 times a week.
you could have
So,
been a
like,
LinkedIn
you know-
sales influencer this whole time.
It could have been.
Can you define,
been.
before we move past this, can you define how long you believe each of these buckets, all 3 of them, should take you in a given week? How much time should you devote to this?
So go back to that same point before. If you want to be an entrepreneur who is building a business, not I want 3 or 4 bosses who pay me a higher salary than I would have got in-house, which is fine. Don't hear me denigrating anything. That's different than someone who says, I want to build a business that is scaling and could eventually run without me and could be sellable, right? So these are 2 paths. If you're in the scalable side, I think it's 50% of any given week is spent on generating pipeline, whether it's outbound, networking, or content.
And in the
I
beginning,
think-
it's 80 or 90.
And in the
Like,
beginning, it's even
when
higher.
we
It's
started,
80 to 90.
We had no clients to service. So guess what we were doing every day? We were researching and writing, and throwing stuff against the wall. And then it starts to work, and then it's like, oh shit, now
how-
we got to do the work.
How did you
And
avoid
that
the doom
balance comes
cycle
back.
though? Like the traditional, we get a bunch of clients and now we're busy and no content comes out and then the pipeline dries up and then we do it all over again. How did you guys prevent
that's
that?
where it comes back to scope.
50%.
And it's
Don't
being
oversell.
really mindful about like what are you delivering and thinking like what's the sharpest way we could deliver this. And so when we started, and there's tons of unknowns, there's variables related to this. But when we started, I made Anthony read the book Built to Sell by John Warlow. I always get his name wrong. And that model, that like cookbook style system, like assembly line, we knew we wanted something like that because those have scale, like de facto. And so we've already like that decision was like the decision that made 100 decisions for us, that no matter what we were going to do, we were always going to try and put it into a fixed scope, step-by-step process.
But again, Rob, even to your point, if we had done Design Joy, it's a subscription. We give you as many things as you can get. Even in other models that aren't the project-based thing, you can still be very specific about the stuff you deliver and keep the scope. Like we've talked about adding a ongoing subscription-based service where we audit all your PMM materials in a given month, right? And we would limit it in some way. We would either say you have a set amount of calls that you can do each week. We review a set amount of assets each week. Whether it's doing project-based long-term subscription, as long as you're not in custom agency, which we've all agreed is what we don't want to do. If you are in any other business model, you can still apply the exact same principles of saying, I can cap what I'm doing for each client, right?
And you'll find your wall. Nick, to your point, I remember a time when it was our first little like ramp where it's like, oh, it's working, and maybe working too well, where it was like maybe 9 months in or a year in, where we were like, shit, we were each running 3 projects a week, trying to do content, and it broke us. It didn't, like, nothing ended. No one would have known, but Anthony and I every day are like, holy cow, what a slog of a day. And that was our whole week. It was like, oh, these are 10, 12-hour days. That was a signal. Okay, we found part of the cap. Let's dial it back. For each entrepreneur, that cap's going to be different. And so Anthony and I, not so much anymore, we've made some of these decisions. We're like, what do we want? Do we want a lifestyle business where we work 20 hours a week and still make a decent amount of money? Do we want $1 million business? Is it financial that we have in this? Do we want something to sell? And like, until you answer those questions, you can't use them as constraints to then design the service. And so Tass is another great example. She's a full-time mother as well. And so she's like, I only want to do this within 3 days a week. And so she has constructed this business. Here's my cap, where like, I don't care how many customers I have. And then once you get there, the levers to start to pull are pricing, like pricing and then process optimization.
What did you guys choose? What did you choose out of the things you just described?
In the very beginning, our goal was we were following like a couple playbooks. It was the built to sell. We knew that. And
5
then
ones.
The 5 ones. The Greg Hickman alt agency introduced that. And that's 1 product, 1 audience, 1 channel, 1 tactic for 1 year. And we're like, let's just do that. And it's like focus, right? And the idea is 5 ones to $1 million business. And so that was the first goal. Can we build $1 million business? Then you get there. It's like, okay, we have that. Now what? And I would say we went through a few months of like, we don't really know. Let's just run the thing. Because we have this sort of internal thing where we're not going to make big decisions unless it's a hell yeah, and we both agree. And we didn't have a hell yeah answer. Now we're thinking about this of like, okay, let's turn this, if I'm being aggressive, successful freelancer solo business. We want to turn it into a real business. And that means employees, right? And from a revenue standpoint, and Anthony posted about this recently, it means how do we go from this like $1.5 million business to a $10 million business? Like, what does that model look like? That's how we're framing it. And so it starts to create the constraints for us, and we don't have it all figured out yet, but that's where we got to with this. And the last point I'll say, and Anthony can chime in if he feels different, we just like building stuff. And so like our sort of mindset around this is like, it's not lifestyle, at least not yet. It's like, we're in this all day, every day. And like, there's balance. Anthony has a family as well. Like, we're not trying to kill ourselves, but like, we are kind of all in. Not everyone has that model. And you do, again, goes back to the co-founder. You need to have the same answer as your co-founder to operate.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're gonna
I just want to say something real quick about where the people who come to us are in their journey, to set some more context about my comments with your business. When people come to us, they do have a high-paying job, essentially. They have a couple clients, whale clients, they're getting paid really well. They are not doing necessarily any of those 3 buckets because they are blessed by referrals. Like, they are in referral land. They've been doing it for 1, 2 years, maybe 3. They have not maxed out the referrals. They keep doing such a good job for these people that it's just endless. And so they have anxiety where they're finally starting to surface a little bit because they're so in the work, and they're having a moment of, okay, I'm at 20, 30, maybe even 40K months, but what the hell am I actually building? I don't have a business. I have this high paying. They have that realization. And so what we help them do is ask themselves those questions that you just said we need to ask ourselves. What kind of business do I actually want to build? What do I want my weeks to look like? How do I want to get that business? And so our point of view is exactly the same as yours. You have to go get business that is not just relying on referrals, so you can diversify your pipeline. Yeah. But a lot of people come to us because you're so amazing and popular. Kudos to you for making such an amazing brand. You are like the North Star for the people who come to us as, how can I be Fletch?
You're much more relatable to the solopreneur doing 50K a month than Refine Labs is. And I think that's kind of like the like Anthony, I love that you brought that example up because it is like they did it, but I think like they're doing 20 million a year. They're no longer relatable. I saw Jay Klaus posted something about this. He's like, I'm going to stop sharing things about how much money, like my revenue and things that we're doing to build the business because it's no longer relevant or relatable to the people that I serve. So you guys are much more relatable in that way, more like on the ground. I'm curious how you guys started to like buy back. How did you start to get back the time and where did you start to delegate first? Like I know Anthony said your sister's was your first or like was your primary copywriter. I don't know if that was like the first thing you offloaded. Like how did you see, okay, we're doing everything ourselves. What do we need to offload now to create space in our life to build this business, to create more content, the things that we love doing, the things that only we can do?
The first thing and Anthony maybe has a more insight into how we started off. So there's a whole story of like how we got into the copy side that we can get into. What you have to remember is there's a ton of experimentation under the hood. And so like as we were bringing business in, what maybe people don't see, we tried a bunch of different shit to try and structure things. We were like, hey, what if we did like, are these 3-week things? Are they 2-week things? What if we did all front loaded? What if we go to the surgeon schedule where Monday and Tuesday I take sales calls and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday I'm like doing the surgeries? Like all of that happened behind the scenes and like eventually they all sort of broke in their own kind of way to that. As for delegating, I would say only until recently have we really thought about, okay, where do we need to delegate and find optimizations in our process? Because up to about, I don't know, Anthony, what, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, you could argue to this week, our model has been evolving, which then has implications on our process and how we deliver. And so we never felt comfortable outsourcing or automating anything. We had to be the ones doing it because it was shifting ground. Now that the process has become stable, we are now looking at it of like, okay, what are the pieces and parts? And copy was the first step, but we actually got there through a different route. And we can go into it if you want. The short version of the story is we started with positioning and messaging around strategy. And our first 20 or 30 clients, we gave them a strategy doc. We gave them our canvas. But we kept hearing the same thing. All of them said, love the workshops. I have so much more clarity. I know what I'm going to say when I get in front of these people. But what do I do? And we're like, well, what do you mean what do you do? We're like, go update your sales deck. Go update your website. Go build campaign. Like you have the direction. You know how you're going to enter this market.
Did we actually deliver that though? Because I feel like we were still doing website copy from early on, and it was just bad.
No, well, so that was the transition. There was like 3 phases of this. We did that, and then we're like, we need to do something. And then we picked websites, which we could have picked sales decks. But we pretty early on added on homepages, but we did it. It was even funny when we added it on. We used to pitch it this way. We do the strategy, and we throw in the homepage for free so you could see it. It was truly an afterthought of like, and plus, right? But then what kept happening, we got the next round of feedback. Yeah, it was great. But your homepage was shit. I had to rewrite the whole thing because we weren't, like, we're okay copywriters, but like we weren't putting the effort into it. And so that was like, okay, process upgrade. Like if that's what people want, how do we solve for getting to real production ready copy? It added on a whole piece of our product. It meant we probably do need copywriting expertise. And there's a running joke at Fletch. Anthony also is pretty well connected and has a big family. Where whenever we need to hire someone, Anthony goes to a family party and we recruit there. And so
Kate is our copywriter. We also, the next thing we offloaded was a bunch of the admin tasks. So I brought in my retired father and he came in and he does all of our, spins up all the proposals, sends everything to all the clients, all the emails and everything. Yeah. So that was the second one. And then this was a really funny story. We worked with this pretty large enterprise and they sent this survey over and it was like part of their procurement process, and they were like, do you have policies in your HR documents saying that you don't use child labor? And then my dad was filling it out and he's like, we don't have that we don't even have policy. So he said no, and then they were like, we can't work with you unless you provide. And he's like, what am I supposed to do? So then the funniest thing is like he told me about this. He's like, this is so ridiculous. And I was like, I've been having our copywriter Kate, I've been having her 12-year-old daughter get screenshots of the websites for. I'm like, we actually do have child labor. And I'm like, they were right to have the question. Can we? I was like, oh no.
Oh my God.
It's pretty fun.
I hope you compensated her. Did she get it?
Yeah, we were paying her. We were paying her under the table, and I'm implicating myself to the IRS right now.
Yeah, I was gonna say more, right? What else?
Yeah, it's a lot. She's on
this
commission.
whole story is just a funny pretend anecdote.
Yeah, Task made it up.
Listening.
Ding.
Yeah,
Task
made it up, right?
made
Task
it
made it up.
Task made it up. That is amazing. But this is the thing, right? Like the actual point of this is that at some point you can't do everything yourself. And why having a co-founder is so valuable, because you guys complement each other in all the right ways. Like exactly where I think the skill gaps are. At least the way that Anthony described it when I first met him was like, hey, like I bring a lot of the content chops to the business. Rob brought the product marketing, and we're learning a lot from each other, but like we kind of have our zones. Erica and I are in the exact same boat. And that immediately creates capacity in your life and in your business. And then
to interject, like the thing that maybe this will evolve over time, and we used to joke, we still do the same things. Like there's this closeness because you're iterating so much that it doesn't work if it's like, all right, Anthony, go create pipeline. Good luck with content this week. I'm going to be ready building the process. They go so hand in hand that you have to be doing both. So even if I had to learn content, steeper learning curve for me, like doing it provides so much more context for both of us to make decisions. And so the negative angle is like, yeah, all successful businesses have two CEOs, but that's the role Anthony and I both play. Like we are doing both things, and that may evolve over time. But and then the second piece into this is like when you talk about delegating, it comes back to process. Like, do you have a structured process? And like when you do, that's a signal. I could probably hire for that, or I could probably automate that. If you don't, coming back to the custom, are you being specific enough? If you struggle to come up with processes and really define frameworks,
it's not even
Can't
process on the internal process is one thing, but I think what you're more hitting on is, are you selling an actual defined
great catch.
deliverable?
It is it's more what I'm selling. Yeah. Are you selling the same thing? Are you delivering it the same every way? Not, what do we do when someone wants a contract? Sure, that's an admin one. So Anthony pulled out the golden part of that.
I appreciate how much you guys are open about, hey, we started with like the April Dunford approach to positioning. That was like our core thinking. That was the mental scaffolding we went into this with. And then over time, it becomes ours. And this idea of borrowed to bespoke frameworks and thinking and all this stuff, I think is also very lost on a lot of people, because they go, I don't have my own positioning framework like Fletch. It's like, no one has their own anything. Everyone has to borrow something, and then you run the play and you go, that didn't work for me. That didn't produce the outcome for the client that I was looking for. So I'm going to change that thing. This produced nothing. Let's throw it in the trash. Let's try a different one. And you do this over and over and over again. Having run my process with like over 100 solopreneurs at this point, it's like I saw that happen. And then to hear you say, hey, yeah, we started with this thing and we've iterated on this thing ruthlessly over the course of years. It's like another data point. It's like, this is the only way. I think this is the only way you're going to get there, is if you pick something and are committed to making it work, and in turn you will make it your own.
And it's so painful, Nick.
Yeah.
Like Anthony and I, like it comes up even now where we get to these points where like, man, the framework's so good. And then one of us or both of us stumble into the edge cases and we're like, the thinking here is not so clear. And it's one of these weird things where we both dread and get really excited by these calls. We're like, maybe every 6 weeks I'll just call Anthony up and be like, I think this is broken. I think we got to change things. We'll get into this constructive debate.
God,
and then
it's
by the end of the call,
happening so
I
much.
just
Yeah.
called Erica like a week
Damn.
ago.
That's happening
I
with us like at least every day, every
Yeah.
other day right now.
I think it was Monday. I was like, okay, the whole workbook.
It's
I
all
just rebuilt
broken.
it. I just redid the
Yeah.
whole thing.
If you guys were separate, though, you would not do that. To
Yeah.
our opinion, is the biggest unlock.
Completely
is that,
agree.
for example, I was listening to April Dunford, and again, any critique I have of April comes from a place of deep admiration. We would not exist if it was not for her. She's the OG. Rob has joked around the whole we're second, so we try harder. She's the number one. We are the far distant second, potentially. So anything I say, it's covered with of that as the covering or whatever. But April, I've heard her talk about her model, and she says people really struggle to understand what I mean when I say differentiated value. And then she proceeds to give a definition of it that is incredibly vague and could be interpreted 10 different ways. And I'm like, I wonder if they struggle to understand it because it makes sense to you in your mind, because you've done 200 positioning projects and you never had to fully offload this to someone else to make it bulletproof. And the thing that Rob and I have benefited from day one is the moment one of us has a brilliant idea and then we share it, and the other person who's not inside of the other person's head says, I don't understand it. And then we're so incredibly frustrated. Why don't you get this? This is so clear. And our running joke is we say it's like a total black box. So like we would send something and then Rob would send back the emoji of the black cube, just being like, this is a black box. And we used to
You've
do
automated
turns.
your brainstorming sessions.
we used to take turns running the workshops together. So we would be on every workshop for a long time. We would be on every workshop together, but one of us would take the lead. So the other person would always see it. So we'd both do the same sessions together. So I would do the workshop in my head. I'm like, I am effing killing this. Like, this is so amazing. And then as I'm talking, I'm getting all fired up. I get a message on the side from Rob, just 10 black boxes, just bam, 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 like this. No idea what you're doing.
These are our first 100 projects,
That is
though. It was like, let's figure it out.
I love it.
And then we'd flip, right? Rob would do something. He'd have some amazing breakthrough in his brain. And I'd be on the other side and be like, I would never be able to repeat what you did because I have no understanding of the underlying logic of how you got to where you got. And when you get to the bottom, it's really just like, anytime you like, you just like, you kind of know. I think it was April or someone else maybe. They were like, how do you know when the positioning is clear enough? They're like, you just look at it, you just kind of know.
Yeah.
And you're like, you kind of know. I don't kind of know. So there has to be something outside of, well, I just done it a lot of times and I can tell when it's good and when it's bad.
Well,
There
that's
has to be
called
some sort of,
expertise, right? Like that's what
Yeah,
they pay you
exactly.
for. That's why the price is so much more than all the others. We know it's in that feeling in your gut.
And we almost hired someone 5 or 6 times. And every time we were going to pull the trigger, we would uncover a big flaw in the framework. And we're like, whoever we hire is going to just be screwed. They're going to get these calls and they're not going to have the 200 cycles and they're not going to get it and they're going to flounder.
Yeah.
And then we'd always put it off. And it was literally only, like Rob said, until very recently that we were like, it's solidified enough that we could get someone else in here.
And you have to write it down. Like someone needs to be able to like read it or hear it and get it. And this kind of goes back into the content piece. Nick, you asked the question, how are you doing both? You get some economies of scale because a lot of the content we create is just for us to run the processes better.
Yeah.
Like the stuff we post isn't like great idea. Some of it is like, I got an angle to make, I think it's funny. and
Anthony's just
entertaining.
being a comedian, just talking shit all day.
Yeah, I mean, those
That's why I
there's
do
that.
have no insights.
But most of the assets, though, are like, we got stuck on this piece. And then Anthony and I'll talk about it. And then it's like, all right, let's create an asset to untangle that piece. And we'll both try. We'll probably do 5 versions of it. We'll post it. And like the posts actually then start to shape which one should we even use in the process. And so anyone who's ever worked with us, we have this board off to the side. It's basically 30, 40 posts that we think are the most important, like this little toolbox. So whenever it comes up in the call, we just slide over and we're like, hey, we've already put 50 hours into this. Let me tell it to you in 3 minutes that you get it and we can move on. Like, and so that's where you get a little bit of the back and
Someone says, well, I have these 4 different products. How would I arrange my homepage? I go, well, we've got the asset for that. And we've built a framework. Yeah. We've shared it on LinkedIn. And it's like that. It's that flywheel. It's like the more you do the same types of projects, the more insights you get, the more objection handlers you get. And if you document it all in images or diagrams or infographics or carousels or whatever, you can use it to make the process better, but also to make the content better.
I love this because this is the core, most unseen piece of creating content. People think you create content to get attention and then get business. But I create content for clarity in my own brain, because there's something different when you hit publish on something again that you think, and if you get a bunch of like black boxes back on your content, then it's like, oh shit, I need to think through this differently. I need to say it differently. The market is not responding. It's a market playground. Yeah. That's how I see content. And I have grown so much simply by putting my ideas out into the world, getting feedback. Like this conversation is because I put a piece of content out, and now my thinking has this new layer, which is going to help me evolve. Like, this is it. This is the thing. This is why we create content, so that we can grow and get better at what we're actually doing and saying and delivering.
And in the beginning, there's an important note in here for your audience of like where they're at. They're thinking of making this pivot into solo. When we started, we looked at LinkedIn as this test bed. And so the threshold of, is it good enough to post on LinkedIn, was very, very low. It was like, this might be the dumbest thing I've ever written. Let's get a reaction. And what'll happen is then the audience will teach you. They literally raise their hand back. This is dead wrong. Here's why. But the learning and speed of that is great. And then you're part of the conversation. You grow part of the audience. Now we run into these like weird spots now. And I think it's more of just a fear we overcome is like people expect our post to be the de facto truth. That's still not it. Like this is still our interpretation of what we think is true, but you have to be willing to change your mind. And so the takeaway is when you're early is just post the damn thing. Like it's a data point for you. It's a feedback loop, and it'll lead to things that you could never even imagine of people and certain folks like chiming in. And
Yeah, when
getting
people
on
come to
call
work with Nick and me, they don't normally have a solidified POV. They're still kind of figuring that out. So we actually, in a way, help with their positioning. It's not the main thing we do by any means, but we help them on that first step of their journey. And all the while, we're creating content for them or with them. And we start posting content from the first call, day one. Nothing is solidified. This is what we talked about. Put it out.
We treat it like an open mic. Like, how does a comedian
Yeah.
work out the routine to get to the Netflix special? They go to small comedy clubs and they tell a single joke or whatever. Like, they work out and they know, hey, how's the timing? How's the inflection? Like, they work all those little ideas out. And that's the use case. And I think you guys are really, really good at showing the evolution of certain ideas and just like everything that you described. And you don't have to post pictures of your kids or your family or whatever the hell you're doing in order to
I loved your post about that, Erica.
I just can't. I won't do it. It's just like
I can't do it.
I know
But
if
like-
I posted a picture of my kids, I would get over 1,000 likes. I'm positive. They're the cutest little things in the world. And no one can tell me
But like,
otherwise.
this is
But
the
I'm
point.
just not gonna
This
do
is the whole point. Like we say, it's like become known for an expertise you own. Like you can write about business and problems and these things in a way that's compelling that also still communicates or displays you as a more human person. Like reading your guys' stuff, I had a sense for who you guys were as people and as personality beyond the fact that, oh, they must really love homepages. Like it's more than that. But I think using it to aerate your ideas in small chunks, like the mental hurdle for a lot of people I see is, how do I communicate 100% of this in every single post? It's like, it's
Right.
bite size. One thing, one idea, one framework, or even one component of the whole framework.
And Nick, along those same lines, right? When you're talking about these early people who don't know exactly what they want to do, like one thing that we did that I was reflecting back with someone else, I was on some other podcast, and we were talking about it, and it sparked this. And I hadn't conceptualized this before, but I think it's actually a really big, interesting distinction. If you're at the beginning and you don't know exactly what you want to sell, and you're trying to figure that out, and you're using content, let's say, as a way to figure that out, what most people will do is they will post content, someone will come to them, and then they will say, let's run a discovery call and figure out like what your kind of core problems are. And then they will generate a custom scoped offer for that person. What we did differently was we would post, before we knew it was homepages, before we knew it was positioning, we were posting all sorts of things to try to figure out what the right service was. We would joke around. We're like, maybe we should do PLG pricing strategy. That was one of the ones we were tossing around. Maybe we should do sales deck narratives, right? And so we eventually found this weird niche of homepages and positioning and the crossover and stuff. But what we did differently, and I think this was from Rob, so I'm not going to take credit. This was Rob's doing. Every time that we posted something in a weird corner of the world, like PLG pricing, and then someone came to us and said, hey, I think the post you did about PLG is pretty interesting. What do you guys do? What we didn't then say was, tell me about your problems, and then we'll custom scope. We would just pitch a service as if it already existed and had defined deliverables and a price. And we would say, do you think we could sell it? So Rob would be like, I think this person wants something, help with pricing. Let me make a pretend pricing offer. So we'd say, well, this is what it is. It's 3 weeks long. It has these 4 deliverables. We're going to meet like this. And it was totally making it up, but it was pitching them something rather than taking in discovery and doing custom. So it's like you can stay broad in the early days. If your goal, you say, people come in, I want to be like Fletch. You can stay broad for a while. Our big header was we help founders market hard to market products. It's about as broad as you could possibly imagine. Every founder in the world is like, that's me.
Yeah.
And what is market? 1,000 different things. That was our header for like our banner image and everything for very long. But the thing we never did is we never did custom scoped projects ever. It was always pitching something as if it exists. And again, even if you don't want to do project work, you want to do subscription, you would pitch the subscription as if it was real. And so you pitch a pricing subscription, you pitch a design subscription, you pitch an SEO subscription, whatever it is, you would pretend that it's real in your testing. And then if you can sell that same thing repeatedly as a subscription or whatever it might be, fractional, whatever you want to call it, that's how you know you have signal that there might actually be a market for something.
But that only works if you're willing to put pressure on the market and follow the market feedback. Because there are some people that go solo that are like, I love logo design. I'm going to build a business around my passion. It's like, great, but is there a market for that? And is there a way to frame it? Maybe, and there probably is, but you may have a harder time. Anthony and I, he's joked about this, like, we could build real estate software or whatever, like whatever, as long as we're building something and it's
we could own car washes, you know?
Yeah, like that's the fun part for us overall. And there is two modalities. You brought up April. We've met with April. She's great. She falls into the passion. She loves the work and she's made decisions. I'm not going to build a business around this. I'm going to go solo for my whole career. She makes plenty of money. She likes to speak. She likes to travel. And so when she came to us, she's like, yeah, that was a no-brainer for me because we had a very candid conversation about how we're thinking about things. But to each their own. I think that was the kind of the core of what your guys' post and Erica, like what you talked about. It's like, is this what you really want? And like, you have to make those decisions before you try and work around all the constraints to actually build something.
Yeah. Did you realize what you're building? Like, have you made all of those like little tic-tac size decisions? And I think the linchpin here to me is like you're saying is the super clear point of view on something.
Yeah.
It's not etched into the Rosetta Stone or like it's not etched in a tablet for life or for all of eternity. It is, here's what I think about a situation or a thing or a problem.
Yeah.
That's the first thing, because otherwise, like I always say, there's so many people with like uninsightful insights. They don't know what they think. And trying to get them to figure out what they think is usually the hardest part to getting people out the door. So it's like the people who have hit that 20, 30, 40, 50K, they know what they think. They just haven't thought a lot about how to organize it.
Well, they haven't done the work. This is the other big thing. We get tons of people that are like, what do I do? How do I start posting? Do the frickin' work and share it. Like if you actually go back when Anthony and I were throwing stuff against the wall, we were doing work for free. No one's permission. We'd grab a startup. I think this is a shitty homepage. I'm going to rewrite it. And I would rewrite it and be like, hey, I rewrote this. Here's why I think it's better. And here's some things I learned along the way. That was us just doing the work. We were learning as we were going. And because you're giving it away for free, guess what? That company's like, whoa, these guys just rewrote our homepage, and they would steal parts of it. Or one of their competitors saw it and they're like, we should talk with this guy. Like that was the beginning. Mm-hmm. But we were willing to show up every day. No one's permission. And so like that's the biggest unlock. You don't know what content to post? Pick your ideal, like you want to work for Nike on a campaign? Whose permission do you need? Like they got a new shoe coming out. Go write an ad and post it and DM it to all the executives. Yep. That's where you start. And just do it over and over and over.
I was joking.
That's pretty much it.
You don't have to be crazy to do this work, but it helps.
It's very much helps.
It's the easiest, like what you're saying is so true. And I tell this people all the time, it's like, just if you're not willing to do the work for free, you're probably not willing to do it like for a very long time if people were paying you. Like you have to care enough, not like follow your passion, care, but you have to really give a shit, because you're going to receive a lot of friction, a lot of resistance and all the things. And to your point, to go out and get business and to try and start more conversations or create content about that thing. Like you have to have that level of ambition in you to want to do that.
And to your point, Nick, you mentioned before, right, about like the having an insight or a POV. Like Rob had an insight from day one, and his was a lot more interesting than any insights I had, because I was very new to the space. I had a career in a completely different field for a very long time, and then came into tech at basically the bottom of the barrel. So like Rob's core insight, with another guy too on the same team at our last company, their insight was that B2B markets are incredibly fragmented, and you think that you can just market to this TAM, but you can't. Every individual little slice of it kind of needs their own tailored version of what you're saying to even matter. That insight is still kind of one of the core things that we've been saying for 3 years. And like Rob did a post about it 2 days ago. And I was like, how crazy the slide deck you built for the internal agency Like, it's effectively the same thing. And now
Yeah.
you don't have to have the final insight. Other insights we uncovered along the way, which have become a core part of our POV, which weren't there at the beginning, are things like all the advice of lead with the benefit. Nobody cares about the features. Just talk about, start with why. All those constellation of ideas we think are like what sent B2B marketing astray and are like the core issue of B2B marketing. That was an insight we learned from doing the work and uncovered. Why is it that when I read 10 B2B websites, I can't figure out anything of what the companies do? Oh, it's because they all lead with the why, and they all sell the outcome and the benefit. And they, nobody wants a 1/4-inch drill. They want a 1/4-inch hole, The 10 different metaphors. You're not selling Mario going from here to here. You're selling him transforming into this. Sell the transformation. Like, there's literally endless amounts of these good best practice marketing advices that resulted in thousands of companies that couldn't explain at all what they did. So like that one we learned on the job. But to your point, you have to start with some insight. If you want to build an expertise-based business, like in the modern era, expertise comes from like, I have an insight, and I think that could be a sharp point of view that could get me into people's mind share, right? And again, it can evolve, it can change, but you do have to come up with something.
100%. Yeah.
A pattern match somewhere. I mean, I think that's a lot of your origin story is like, hey, we saw this thing. We saw something happening here. We started to sell. We started to build it. We didn't know exactly where it was going to take us or what the end goal was, but we knew this direction and this idea, and that's enough to set you off on to. I mean, look at that. Look where that one insight led to. But again, you got to have some pattern match somewhere.
Yeah.
There's the opposite problem as well. Some people have too many insights and try to be a thought leader on all of them and solve all of them. And that's another end of the spectrum where people come to us and it's like, okay, but you can't be everything to everyone and have an opinion on everything marketing, Even if you do, I'm not saying don't have opinions, but if you spread all those opinions around, no one's going to know what the hell you stand for.
Yeah, not being able to codify it so that you end up saying a lot of the same things over and over again is also a very big problem.
Yeah.
I admire the simplicity of what you guys have built and the structure of it, and like the fact that you guys like are very steadfast in doing it. Like, there's so many like little mini master classes along the way, and just watching you guys build this thing, endlessly inspired by it. So I appreciate you guys so much for coming and jamming with us. I could talk to you forever, but
I could talk to you for literally ever.
We're like way over. We should have a recurring segment.
I have to get my kids from camp. I'm like looking at the clock. Like, damn it.
We should have a recurring segment. And I love this, guys. This has been a ton of fun.
Don't forget to post, Erica. And thanks for having us.
Oh, I'll be posting. I took a screenshot of us talking already. So with your
no, I meant of your kids. Picking up your kids.
Picking up
You gotta post. Getting the kids in the car taught me something about B2B marketing.
Yeah, I learned a lot about positioning, not from these guys, but from the fact that they used that Tass said they have 12-year-olds.
There's definitely a story from yesterday. One of my kids, I have twins, so the boy is absolutely obsessed. He needs his peanut butter sandwiches to be open-faced lately.
Nice.
And we didn't know why, and it all came out yesterday. He's gauging the amount of peanut butter on the bread, and he was rejecting, because we cut it into little pieces still, he was rejecting the ones that didn't have enough peanut butter. And I'm positive if I thought really hard, there's a marketing lesson in there somewhere.
Oh, there's an open source post.
Yeah. This is
you open source or not.
Quantity. Yeah. This is quantity over quality. This is the fact that they need more blogs. They need more posts. This is the connection here.
Oh,
it doesn't matter how naturally organic the peanut butter is. As long as there's more, we're happy with it. Smear that shit all over it. Guys, thank you so much. This has been a ton of fun.
Thanks for having us.